Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention for the arrival of the representative of His Majesty the King. Will the audience please rise and remain standing until after the national anthems are played?
The mission of the American Battle Monuments Commission is to commemorate and honor the service and the sacrifices of the United States Armed Forces. Memorial Day is indeed a special day for us, and it is an honor for me to be with you here today. On behalf of ABMC and our acting secretary, I'd like to extend a particularly warm welcome to His Majesty's Representative Admiral Brumlar and the United States Consul General DeWitt Walsh, as well as the very distinguished military and civilian leaders gathered here today. For those who serve in the United States Armed Forces, it is guaranteed that you will serve with people from all across the United States. New York to California, Minnesota to Texas, and everywhere in between. This is as true today as it was during the Second World War. Men and women from the farms and from the cities volunteer for service. Mechanics, farmers, teachers, businessmen, all walks of life were represented in the war effort. Some arrived at the field of battle on foot, some in tanks, and some descended from the skies under parachutes. Different backgrounds before the war and different specialties during, all coming together for one common goal: to rid the world of oppression. Here at the Netherlands American Cemetery, our nearly 8,300 service members share another commonality. They paid the ultimate sacrifice for freedom. They lie here in eternal peace and quiet glory. We commemorate them, and we shall not forget them. Let us also not forget that behind us, on the walls of the missing, are inscribed 1,722 names. As recently as this past year, some of our missing have been recovered, such as Private Warren DeVault from Tennessee and Private Alvin Hathaway from Vermont. Their names will be marked with a rosette to signify this recovery. Others, like Second Lieutenant Joseph Schexnayder, an aviator, still lie in unknown graves. Second Lieutenant Schexnayder left a quiet life among the sugarcane fields of Garyville, Louisiana, to join the war effort, and in doing so, like so many others, gave his life so that others could live freely. As time goes on, those who personally knew or remembered these men and women are fewer and fewer, as we are all victims of time. But the sacrifice of our fallen will not be forgotten and will always be important to the citizens of the United States. When we see the commitment and the dedication of the citizens of the Netherlands to our fallen, it is clear that these sacrifices are important to them as well, and for that we are thankful. It is this commitment to the fallen that ensures time will not dim the glory of their deeds. Thank you.
Namens Zijne Majesteit de Koning, Schout bij Nacht, Brummelaar. On behalf of the United States of America, Consul General DeWitt, Walsh. In aanwezigheid van de heer Van Leeuwen wordt nu in krans gelegd namens de Rijksministerraad. In the presence of General Walters,
In the presence of General Walters,
of
and
Allied
on behalf
Command
of the men
Operations
and women,
the United States European Command, in aanwezigheid van de commandant der Nederlandse strijdkrachten, generaal
in the presence
Eigensheim,
of General
wordt nu
Volmer,
in krans gelegd
and on behalf
namens het
of
Nederlandse
Allied Joint
ministerie
Force
van
Command
Defensie
Brunson.
en de gehele Nederlandse krijgsmacht. In the presence of General Volmer and on behalf of Allied Joint Force Command Brunson, in aanwezigheid van gouverneur Remkens wordt nu in krans gelegd namens de provincie Limburg. In aanwezigheid van burgemeester Cox wordt nu in krans gelegd namens de gemeente IJsden-Margraten. On behalf of the American Battle Monuments Commission, Director of Cemetery Operations at Ryan. An address will now be given by Jennifer DeWitt Walsh, United States Consul General.
Good afternoon, and please let me begin by expressing the deep regret of our Chargée d'Affaires, Maria Verloop, that she was unable to be present today. I know it was a deeply felt personal disappointment for her. Few days represent more complicated emotions for Americans than Memorial Day. On one hand, it is a day when we gather with family and friends in backyards and public parks for picnics and barbecues and concerts. But it is also a day to honor our fallen and remember the cost of the freedoms we enjoy. It's a day on which families might visit a cemetery like this and leave flowers for a soldier who did not live to see the fruits of his sacrifice. It's a day to express gratitude towards our heroes and mourn them in the same breath. It is perhaps not surprising that we celebrate Memorial Day at the end of May. In the United States, this is the unofficial beginning of the summer season. The days are getting longer, our flowers are blooming, our children are graduating from school, and they are ready to embrace the opportunities that freedom affords them. And that freedom is in part due to those who lie here. The 10,010 soldiers buried or memorialized here helped secure victory in Europe and a chance to shape our futures as we saw fit. From their sacrifices came a new world, a deepened relationship between the United States and the Netherlands, and a responsibility to adhere to the ideals for which they gave their lives. On behalf of the people of the United States, and especially on behalf of the families whose loved ones lie here at rest, thank you for joining us today. Thank you to the people of Margraten for tending to these graves and for keeping stories of the liberation alive generation after generation. We thank families like the Rosenstratens, Jan and Sophia, who attended every Memorial Day event here at Margraten until COVID closed the cemetery to the public last year. Over the years, the Rosenstratens have adopted 3 graves and passed on this tradition of remembrance to their own children. We are incredibly honored to have them with us here today, and we thank them for representing the many families who have demonstrated such devotion to our fallen. Today, we also remember the lessons taught to us and the values instilled in us during the Second World War. The soldiers buried here, along with members of the Dutch resistance and survivors of the conflict, provide lessons in endurance and resilience that help us weather the current pandemic. They exemplified the qualities that should guide us and our actions as nations, as allies, and as people. We are so pleased and grateful to once again gather to celebrate the freedom they secured for us, the Dutch-American bonds that they strengthened, and the values that still bind us together. Thank you for remembering them and for honoring those values today and always.
Mr. Geoffrey van Leeuwen of the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs will now address the audience.
Thank you, and thank you on behalf of the Prime Minister to be here. That's an honor for me indeed. It's a very important day, this day of memorial. The government of the Kingdom of the Netherlands will never forget the sacrifices made by the United States for our freedom. And the graves of the literally thousands and thousands, often very young American soldiers here at Margraten are a testament to the massive and ultimate price that was paid by the United States for our freedom. We will always remember them and remember their sacrifices. And not only then, 76 years ago, the United States was crucial for regaining our freedom. The US remains a crucial partner, not only in terms of security, but also in terms of values. Through our partnership in NATO, remains a cornerstone security for which we are grateful. Thank you very much.
An address will now be given by Mr. Remkes, the King's Commissioner for the province of Limburg.
Excellencies, generals, ladies and gentlemen, I have never been here before, here in Margraten, at the only American war cemetery in the Netherlands. It is very moving, all those white headstones, all those names on the walls of the missing, which together represent more than 10,000 young Americans who fought and died for our freedom. Just as moving is how they all, here in the south of the Netherlands, have been taken to people's hearts. I have to admit, I didn't know. I didn't know that here every fallen man and every fallen woman has been adopted. An adoption that started as early as 1945, because the people here, the Limburgers, felt so connected to their liberators. Liberators with whom they celebrated freedom, to whom they waved goodbye when they went to the front, and whom, to their immense sadness, they saw return death. It is a connection that exists to this day. When I hear that adoptions are passed down from generation to generation, and that 76 years later, there are even waiting lists to care for a fallen liberator. But what's very special, that because of this adoption, all those graves and names were given a story, a face, and a history. They also allowed me to discover my own association with Margraten. I grew up in the north of the country, in Groningen, in Zuidbroek, a medium-sized village where on November 26, 1943, an American bomber fell out of the sky, narrowly missed the school, and came to a blazing halt in a meadow. Amazingly, this crash cost the life of only one crew member, Sergeant Poirier, known as Raymond. It now appears that Raymond, who lost his life just a few kilometers from the house where I was born, is buried here in Margraten. I now know that he had already been wounded in the air when his damaged B-17 Flying Fortress, returning from a bombing raid on Bremen, was an easy target for the enemy Messerschmitts. The rest of the crew were able to bail out on time. They survived the war. He did not. I also now know that Raymond was 22, was from New York State, and was a construction worker before the war. Just like I now know that his parents lost a son, their 6 other children a brother, his young wife Edna, her husband, and Raymond Jr., his father. They say that you do not die until you are forgotten, and no longer know. I had never been here before, but I can now say with certainty, nobody here is forgotten. Here in Margraten, these men and women who died far too young and for our freedom, they live on forever.
General Walters, Supreme Allied Commander Europe, will now address the audience.
Rear Admiral Rumelair, Consul General DeWitt Walsh, General Ono Ecclesheim, General Jorg Volma, fellow flag officers, Mr. Ryan, distinguished citizens of this great nation, and most importantly, to the loved ones of the fallen. It's a most sacred honor to be here on these hallowed grounds. For over a year, the COVID pandemic has challenged all of us to an unprecedented degree, and we remain grateful to all of you who continue to creatively adapt time-honored traditions in keeping our American-Dutch friendship strong, and the actions of our fallen alive for the sake of health and security as we continue to mitigate the pandemic. Today, we remember our fallen service members here and abroad who paid the ultimate sacrifice during the course of 2 world wars, especially these patriots who rest eternally here before us. Although the extent of their selfless sacrifice can never fully be calculated or paid back, keeping their memory alive is an absolute must. From across the European continent to the far corners of the globe, we can still reflect on the true meaning of Memorial Day. We can collectively mourn those lost in service to our nation. We can share in the sorrow of all Gold Star families and friends who grieve the loss that never goes away, intertwined as it is with pride of service and selflessness of sacrifice. This Memorial Day, as we lay wreaths in honor of our fallen patriots, let us reverently unite in remembrance. Let us cherish the indelible Dutch-American bond forged through the darkest days in history. For not even a global pandemic lessens our commitment to honoring our fallen heroes who rest in endless peace. We cherish their service to our nation on Memorial Day and every day. Let me close by extending a personal and professional NATO thanks to our fantastic Dutch host for all you've done and continue to do. These hallowed grounds remain sacred, and we thank you.
TAPS is the final call of the evening in the United States military. Of all military bugle calls, none is so easily recognized or more apt to evoke emotion as the 24 notes that comprise TAPS. The origin of this signal dates from the American Civil War. The use of TAPS is unique to the United States military, as the call is sounded at funerals, wreath layings, and memorial services, yet it is recognized around the world.